Do you have trouble making your cold calls truly useful for you? I can't tell you how many salespeople tell me this. Cold calls are just a waste of time. They don't work anymore. There's no way to make them effective. But you know what? In fact, they can work well, but sometimes we just need to go back to the beginning to do it right. In this video, I will show you 11 steps to successful cold calls. Check them out. The first step is that cold calls can't harm you. I noticed that so many of us, including myself when I first started making cold calls, are very afraid and very nervous about potential rejection. Sometimes we hold back when it comes to the risks of implementing new and unconventional cold call strategies that work. We are very afraid of just making ourselves look strange. And it is very important to understand that nothing can harm you. I can't tell you how much time passed before I finally started to really enjoy cold calls. What did I do to achieve this? After a bunch of unsuccessful calls, I started being playful, started taking risks instead of becoming more nervous. And as a result, many of these cold calls became more effective over time. The second step is to make it a game. Cold calls are about numbers, such as the number of repeated calls. The game is about the ability to go through potential rejections until you eventually reach someone who is the decision maker. The reason most people hate making cold calls is that a conversion rate of, for example, 1 to 2% results in 1 to 2 scheduled meetings out of 100 attempts. And in the process, you will have to make 99 calls that lead to nothing. So make it a game. If you see that the call is starting to go completely downhill, be ready to take risks, be playful, try something completely new. If the client behaves rudely, it might be necessary to change tactics and become a bit stricter, but do so playfully and without causing irritation. This is a sport, not something that threatens your life or safety. Make it a game. Want me to show you how to play? I'll pick up the phone and call your client live. Then click here. Step number 3. Warm up the client as much as possible. I don't mean preparing for the call or looking for positive energy. On the contrary, you don't think about making cold calls. You just do it. Warm up the interaction as much as possible before and after the call. Make sure the clients know who your company is or who you are personally. It could be a combination of cold calls with advertising campaigns or email or LinkedIn newsletters. Prepare yourself for a long process where you make up to 20 contacts with one client, say, over a few months. This way, before you reach them, they will be more receptive. This means that you send them emails, message them on LinkedIn, visit their office, do whatever it takes to get in front of the client. Experience shows that most scheduled meetings that actually take place happen sometimes on the 6th or even 7th contact with a potential client. Step number 4, let's talk about scripts and scenarios and how necessary they are. So many salespeople tell me, oh, I don't like using scripts. Then I'll sound scripted. And my response will always be the same. I will ask you personally, now, what is your favorite TV show? And what is your all-time favorite movie? Do you think that when they were filming that movie or that TV show, they didn't have a script? No. Of course, they had a rehearsed script. So by the time they actually went to shoot it, it looked completely and entirely natural. You wouldn't even suspect that it was done according to a script. The reason why it's a great movie or a great TV show is that it doesn't actually look scripted, but it is very clearly written and pre-trained. The same applies to an effective cold call. If you want to have a higher conversion rate, practice the script in advance so that you sound better than ever. Sometimes I see that when salespeople make calls without a script, they just go in circles, and the potential client is absolutely not interested. And all the client wants to do is stop talking to you. Number 5. Think about your first 7 seconds of a phone conversation. To some people, this may seem obvious or even trivial, but I believe that we don't often consider how we introduce ourselves to a potential client at the beginning of the conversation. And knowing your first 7 seconds, you will have a much better chance of getting to the next step. The way cold calls always work and will always work is because in the first 7 seconds, you get the next 25 seconds. And then Throughout the entire call, you should always fight for the next 25 seconds after the previous 7 seconds. The more you talk about yourself and how great your company is, the worse it will be for you. The goal of my video is to get you started with cold calls and to do it with more motivation. Remember, the potential client doesn't care about you. They care about themselves, solving their problems, achieving their results, not yours. Skip this part about yourself and move on to what actually concerns them. Step number 6, focus on the challenges you see in the client's market. That is, what problems you see or know from the client's market. And this will further empower you. Firstly, it shows that you really keep your finger on the pulse of what is actually happening on the client's territory and their market. You show that you have real experience and don't talk about yourself. Then you have a better chance of getting clients to talk. And again, data shows that the more you are interested in the client's difficulties and concerns, the more likely you are to get a second meeting and eventually close the sale. That is, focus on the challenges you see. Of course, not on your own. Step number 7. Engage the clients so that they start talking even more. This is impossible to overlook. The more the potential client starts talking meaningfully, the higher the likelihood that they will stay on the phone. This way, you can plan the next step and move towards a sale. And I see that so many salespeople are focused on presenting what they are selling. They fail to engage potential clients in a dialogue. And so, let's say, for example, after your monologue about the client's challenges, you end with something that sounds like this: Vitali, are any of these challenges relevant to you? Next, you invite them to a meeting and the client says no. You say, well, all right, fair enough. It seems this conversation doesn't even make much sense. Before hanging up, can I ask you one last question? And they will most often say yes to this. And then this question is the last chance. And the next phrase could sound something like this: if there was one thing that could help you achieve better results, regardless of what you are involved in or what you are selling, what would that one thing be that could improve your sales, results, or savings? And silence. Let the client fill it. I'll say it again. Engage them so that they start talking right in the moment. I have used this in various niches: marketing, equipment, nutrition, any services and products, IT. Make the clients talk more. Step number 8. Understand what is actually happening with the client right now. What isn't working? What have they already tried to solve their problem? This is necessary to engage them in the conversation, isn't it? And yes, the data shows that many salespeople make mistakes. They switch to presentation mode too early. They say that you are in the right place. We have a great new service. It's an incredible product that will solve everything for you. And by the way, it's at a low price, only $99.90, and includes credit and a personal manager. Anyway, they switch to self-presentation mode because they are excited, because they feel like they have a fish on the hook, right? Great fishermen, when they feel a fish biting, they don't pull immediately. In fact, they give a little more time to allow the fish to reliably bite the bait. And that's exactly what we do in sales. When a potential client says, oh yes, actually, but one of the problems we are dealing with is that, and continues. And here, don't say, I have a solution. This is how we work. Instead, say, what else is important to you? You dive in, you ask questions about these challenges to really make sure that your solution fits. And once you have ensured that your idea or solution is truly interesting, the clients will feel the value. And again, they feel interested and they feel that you understand them. Step number 9. This is obvious. Many people know this, but once again, make sure for yourself that setting the next step is one of the most important parts of concluding the conversation. The point of any call is that you set the next step. I always ask salespeople what the goal of the call is for cold calls, and they always say to sell. No, it doesn't work. Ultimately, in the long run, a successful cold call can lead to a sale. We need to make sure that we have recorded this next step, whether it's a personal meeting, a webinar, preparing proposals, or something else. Make sure you have clearly recorded the next step with the client. You can also add this step with an invitation in the calendar, including the date, time, and email. This way, we significantly increase the likelihood of the next step. Number 10, technically confirm the next step. This means that during the conversation with the client on the phone, you send the invitation right at that moment, for example, to the calendar, or at least send a message to the client for the future. If this invitation was sent, make sure it reached their inbox and not spam, so they accept the invitation. Number 11, don't run away from the phone after each call. Now, this is very important because I started this conversation by saying that ultimately cold calls are about numbers. It's about dialing a lot of numbers. There is a big difference between effective people who make calls to find potential clients and ineffective people. The difference is that effective people, every time they finish a phone conversation, immediately record the result in the CRM system and move on to the next call right away. There are now many services that even do auto dialing. This way, a person never has to hang up the phone. After each call, move on to the next one. The most effective cold call managers make many calls every day, 50, 100, 200 calls. And the only way to get such a number of dialed numbers is to not get distracted from the phone after each call. Even if you have a successful call, use that momentum to immediately move on to the next call. Don't run away from the phone after each call. So, there are 11 steps for cold calls that work. I want to hear from you. Which of these ideas was the most useful for you? Be sure to share in the comments to join the discussion. And if you like this video, I have a great free masterclass for you. Just click here to get instant access. Seriously, just click here. Additionally, if you find something valuable, please like this video below on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to get access to new useful videos.